My name is Eleanor Whitaker, a widow of 76. I sit quietly in the worn velvet armchair in the living room, watching the yellow maple leaves sway gently outside the window. This is an old craftsman house in a quiet suburb of Oregon, once a home filled with laughter and warm evenings spent by the lamplight. Now there is a chilling silence. The autumn wind whistles through the windows, mixed with the monotonous hum of an old TV showing an outdated newscast. The silence is so heavy that I can hear the grandfather clock in the hallway ticking away, as if it were beating out the last moments of a person's life. I closed my eyes, and like a slow-motion film, old memories flooded back. The image of Henry, my late husband, appeared clearly in my mind. His hands, roughened by the years, always smelled of pine and beeswax, the hands that had created so many exquisite carvings in the small carpentry workshop behind the house. I still remember his gentle smile, his bright eyes every time he told his own imaginative adventure stories to little Nathan. And Nathan, my beloved son, with his round, eager eyes, watching his father turn lifeless pieces of wood into model planes and ships. The laughter echoed throughout the house, the smell of my baked goods mixed with Henry's woody scent. All created a gentle harmony of happiness and peace. Back then, I believed that my family was inviolable. Nothing could separate them, but all that remained were memories. When I opened my eyes, the cold reality poured a bucket of water on my dry heart. The house that had been a fortress of love and memory was now an empty shell, silent and cold. Henry had left me 12 years ago after a sudden heart attack, leaving me alone to face an unfillable void. Nathan, the son I had once placed all my hopes on, had almost no contact. Every phone call was short and superficial, wrapped up in a few perfunctory questions before quickly turning to money. The sound of my footsteps echoed in the empty rooms, becoming the only sound, a haunting echo of loneliness lingering in every corner. I stood up and walked out to the small garden behind. The rose pots I had tended with my own hands were still blooming proudly even though autumn had arrived, the fragile petals holding onto the last bit of color before winter. I meticulously trimmed the dry branches, gently touching each petal as if caressing something precious that was slowly fading away. This garden, where I had entrusted my soul and time, was the last bit of comfort left. Here, among the grass, trees, the earth, and the small life, I found a bit of peace, a bit of fragile meaning for my life that was slowly passing by. As the sunset reddened the sky, I returned home. I opened the old leather diary, the pages of which had faded over the years, holding every memory, every emotion, every dream that I had gone through with Henry and Nathan. My pen slowly glided over the pages, writing down the last lines of the day. This house, once a haven of love, is now only an echo of the past. The laughter has stopped. The footsteps have gone far. Will that laughter ever return? Or will I be stuck in this silence forever? I wondered, was there something, a miracle, an event, that could shake my fate, pull me out of the abyss of loneliness and regret? I didn't know, but deep down I still silently hoped something would come, a change. The next morning, the pale sunlight of early autumn filtered through the window, spreading shimmering streaks of light like silk on the wooden floor that had faded over the years. I, holding a cup of hot tea still steaming, slowly walked through the familiar hallway of the quiet house. My eyes stopped at the wedding photo hung solemnly on the opposite wall. The photo had yellowed over time, but Henry's smile was still as bright as it had been in the beginning. I still clearly remembered the way he always held my hand tightly whenever we went somewhere together. His hands were rough from work, but strangely gentle, and the way he told funny stories that made me laugh even on the most tiring days. Henry, a talented carpenter with skillful hands, not only built exquisite wooden furniture, but also built my whole world. He was the support, the joy, the soul of my life. I looked at the photo next to me, a picture of Nathan as a little boy. His chestnut brown hair was messy, his round eyes sparkled with light. He was holding tightly to the wooden airplane model that Henry had made for him. I remembered Nathan from those years, the boy who was always attached to his father, curiously asking everything about wood, about chiseling, about how to create miracles with his hands. There was a time when he dreamed of becoming an architect, building beautiful structures like the world he grew up in. I used to draw so many visions for my son, a future that was wide open, full of passion and aspiration. But then life took a different turn. Now, Nathan is just a salesman in Portland, living a quiet life that is so strange to me, as if all those dreams of the past had never existed. The path he chose may have been safe, but in my eyes, it was a faint, unmarked path. Henry's death 12 years ago was like a deep stab to my heart. A sudden heart attack had taken him away from me, leaving me alone in a sea of loss and desolation. I had hoped that the pain would be something that would bring Nathan and I closer together, that we would lean on each other to get through it. But it didn't. The bond between me and my son gradually faded over time. The calls became less frequent, then became indifferent greetings before he hurriedly asked for money. "Are you okay? I need some money quickly." That phrase became a bitter refrain. I no longer felt like a loving mother, but just a silent, relentless ATM. While I was still immersed in sad memories, the doorbell suddenly rang, interrupting the train of thought that was threatening to drag me down. A small ray of light flashed in my heart. It was Caleb, my beloved nephew, the son of Henry's deceased sister. Caleb, now 20 years old, tall, mature, with a warm smile and intelligent filial eyes. He was like a rare ray of sunshine shining into my gloomy life. Today, as usual, he did not come empty-handed. This time he brought a hardcover historical novel, a genre I had always loved. "Hi, Eleanor," Caleb said, his voice full of energy. "I just found this at a used bookstore and thought of you." We sat down at the wooden kitchen table, which used to be filled with laughter. Caleb talked passionately about his college courses, his heated debates with friends, his ambitious plans for the future. I listened quietly, feeling strangely calm. Caleb was the only person who truly listened to me, understood and shared every little thing in life. He was the thin but strong thread connecting me to the big world out there, the one who made me feel like I still mattered in someone's life. Caleb suddenly asked hesitantly, "Mrs. Eleanor, how is Uncle Nathan? I called him several times, but he didn't pick up." I could only sigh, a tired sigh, like a reflex that had become instinct. "Nathan is still busy, Caleb. Work is taking him away." I tried to hide the truth with a forced smile, but Caleb's sympathetic eyes told me he understood. He had sensed that rift for a long time. Even though he didn't say it out loud, I knew he was always watching me with sincere concern, and that warmed my heart a little. Today's conversation, though only fleeting, deepened the pain I tried to bury, the pain of a mother-son relationship that had gradually become estranged. I wondered if Nathan would one day come back, really come back, not just in the calls asking for money, but in love? Or would I continue to live between old memories and a numbingly bland relationship with the very child I had invested my life in? A few days after my conversation with Caleb, I was in the kitchen making lunch, Henry's favorite chicken stew, when the doorbell rang. I thought Caleb had come back because he'd forgotten something, maybe the book he'd borrowed from me the day before. But when I opened the door, I found him standing there, looking hesitant and a little embarrassed. He had a neatly folded copy of the local newspaper in his hand, but his eyes were avoiding mine as if he was hiding something. "Eleanor, I have something to tell you, Caleb began, his voice lower than usual. Nathan, he's getting married. I stood still for a moment. The glass of orange juice I had just poured slipped from my trembling fingers and fell to the floor, splattered. Luckily, it didn't break. Marriage? I repeated, my heart sinking. How, how did you not know anything? The shock quickly gave way to a dull ache in my chest. My son was getting married, and I, his only remaining mother, had only learned the news from my own nephew. Caleb gently placed the paper on the table, then sighed. I just found out. Her name is Vanessa. She's a big event planner in Portland. She's pretty well known in the industry. He hesitated, glanced at me, then continued reluctantly. And Nathan wants you to help pay for the wedding. Wedding? Those two words echoed in my head like a call to hope. A part of me, which had been waiting for the chance to be close to my son, immediately woke up. Maybe this was my chance to re-enter Nathan's life, to attend his big day, to witness him find happiness. I quickly brushed aside the hurt feeling of being abandoned, and instead a simmering excitement rose inside me. Sponsorship? Of course, Caleb. I'll help, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but my throat tightened. Where does Nathan want it? What arrangements do we need? Caleb looked at me with a complicated look, as if he was struggling between telling the truth or keeping quiet. He wants to have it at a rather famous manor, Willow Creek, in the suburbs. Very luxurious, and also very expensive, ma'am. It's okay, I said almost immediately. As long as Nathan's happy, I can handle it. I had saved up a good chunk of money, Henry's insurance money, plus my pension savings over the years. I'd thought I could use it when I was older, but now, if it could bring my son back to me, I was ready. I wanted Nathan to know that I was still there, ready to lend a hand whenever he needed it. Caleb hesitated. Eleanor, I need to tell you something. His voice became serious. I've met Vanessa a few times. She's cold and controlling. I'm not sure she really cares about anyone but herself. His words were like a cold wind that blew through the glimmer of hope that had just begun to shine in my heart. But I immediately tried to push away the feeling of unease. Oh, Caleb, I've only met her a few times. Maybe she's just being strong and a perfectionist. A wedding is a big deal, and everyone wants everything to be perfect, I said, trying to convince myself. But deep down, Caleb's warning planted a seed of vague, unnameable anxiety in me. But the desire to be close to my son was greater than anything. I told myself that everything would be okay, that a mother's love and sacrifice could overcome all barriers, all misunderstandings, even the rift that had lasted for more than a decade. I gently placed my hand on Caleb's shoulder and squeezed. Don't worry, son. I believe everything will be okay. What matters is that Nathan is happy, and I will do everything to make that happen. Caleb kept looking at me, his eyes full of hesitation and concern. But he didn't say anything more. Perhaps he understood that once a mother made up her mind, it was hard to change her mind. I walked Caleb to the door. As he disappeared behind the bougainvillea hedge, I felt a mixture of emotions, a bright light of long-awaited hope, mixed with a quiet worry. I wondered, would this wedding truly heal the estrangement between Nathan and me? Or would it just be a gateway to a new chapter of unhealed hurt? I didn't know. But one thing was certain. I still loved my son with all my heart. Less than a day after my conversation with Caleb, my phone rang. The name I'd been waiting for all these years flashed on the screen. Nathan. My heart leaped, my hopes soaring. I imagined a warm call where my son would thank me, share his excitement about the wedding, and maybe, just a little, say that he still needed his mother. But the voice on the other end of the line shattered all my hopes. Cold, decisive, no greeting, no small talk. Mom, I need to wire money urgently for the deposit on Willow Creek Manor. They want immediate payment. I was stunned. The figure Nathan gave me was staggering, a huge sum of money, far beyond anything I could have imagined for a wedding. Willow Creek was already luxurious, but what he said next left me bewildered. 120 guests, a five-star menu, a famous live band, imported flowers from Europe. Every detail he described was like an expensive contract that I was forced to sign unconditionally. No apologies, no thanks. Just sweet orders dressed up as motherhood. I was shocked, but I said nothing. I nodded silently. My desire to enter his world, to see him happy, was greater than my anxiety about money. I told myself this was an investment, not just in Nathan's wedding, but in my relationship with my son. Maybe this generosity would become a testament to a mother's unconditional love. Maybe Nathan would realize that I had never turned my back on him, even in his loneliest years. A few days later, Vanessa showed up. It was the first time I saw her, the woman who held my son's heart. She wasn't alone. Nathan came with her, like a satellite caught in orbit around a glittering planet. The door opened, and Vanessa strode in, as if on a catwalk in the spotlight. She was resplendent in a designer dress, shiny heels, her blonde hair curled in elaborate curls, her face immaculately made up. But it wasn't her appearance that sent a chill down my spine. It was her eyes, cold, dry, calculating. She didn't say a word of praise about my cozy little house. No questions, no smiles, no inquiries. Vanessa's eyes darted around every corner of the living room, from the old wooden chair where I used to knit to the old wedding photo hanging on the wall, as if she were examining the value of each item, not entering the home of her future mother-in-law. She didn't see me as a relative, but as an object to be evaluated, controlled. Nathan stood beside her, his eyes never meeting mine. There was no hug, no warm greeting. "This is your mother, Eleanor, and this is Vanessa," he said, as casually as introducing colleagues at a meeting. A brief, cruelly distant introduction. From that day on, Nathan started calling me more often. At first, my heart was racing. I believed that my efforts were paying off, that my son was coming home. But then I realized those calls never started with "How are you?" or "What did you eat today?" They were always, "Mom, I need money to pay the florist," or "Mom, the photographer wants an advance payment." Sometimes it was, "Mom, can I get an advance payment for the Rolls-Royce rental?" Nathan's tone was always urgent, as if I owed him something, as if my hesitation was an unforgivable mistake. Every time I heard the phone ring, I no longer felt excited. Instead, I felt a heaviness, like a boulder pressing down on my chest. I slowly understood the bitter truth. I was not Nathan's mother in his eyes. I was his wallet, his never-ending bank account, his go-to place when he needed an expense paid immediately. And the love? It had long since disappeared, or worse, perhaps never really existed, since I chose to follow my passion instead of being with my son. The hurt gnawed at me little by little, like small scratches that silently but never healed. I began to doubt myself. Was I wrong? Was helping Nathan not a bond but a dependency? Was I trying to patch a rotten crack with the last of my money? I wasn't sure. All I knew was that what I once saw as hope was now slowly becoming a haunting shadow, silently swallowing my remaining peaceful days. The fateful day finally arrived, the day I was invited to attend a meeting with the wedding planner at Willow Creek Manor. I told myself this might be my chance to be present, to actually be a part of the preparations for my son's big day. I carefully picked out my most elegant outfit, spritzed on a bit of my old but precious perfume that I reserved for special occasions. Despite my anxiety, I held on to a sliver of hope that today would be different. When I arrived, Willow Creek was bustling. The place was picturesque, but my heart sank when I saw three people standing in the lobby. the wedding planner, a young woman named Sarah, and beside her, Nathan and Vanessa. The moment I stepped inside, my position was clear, on the periphery. Vanessa quickly took center stage. She spoke to Sarah in a firm voice, her hands gesticulating like an orchestra conductor, flipping through catalogs. Nathan stood silently beside her, nodding in agreement, his eyes never once glancing at me. I tried to insert myself into the conversation. A few times I offered my opinion about flowers, about the menu, in hopes of being heard. I think white roses would be more appropriate than orchids. They feel classic and elegant, I said quietly. Vanessa turned to me, her eyes cold. Without a word, she turned to Sarah and interrupted. We'll have orchids, imported. Her voice was dry and hard. I didn't get a response. My opinion was a meaningless whisper in a busy room. Though I tried to smile, my heart sank. I was present in the room but invisible. Every time I offered a suggestion about tablecloths, chairs, cake colors, it was dismissed, or worse, ignored. The climax came when we discussed the seating chart. Sarah spread out a map of the banquet hall on the table, marking each spot. Vanessa immediately picked up a pen, commanding like a general. When it was my turn, she stopped and circled a table in the far corner, near the kitchen, where the staff was constantly coming and going. Eleanor will sit here, she announced casually, with a few of my relatives and some of Nathan's friends who didn't have enough space in the center. I stared at my spot, away from the main table, away from the lights, and away from my son. A cold sense of self-pity washed over me. I was no longer the mother of the groom, just a strange guest, given a seat out of politeness. Nathan stood there, silent as a wax statue, no words of defense, no understanding glances. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand. I tried to calm down, swallowing my anger, my voice shaking slightly as I spoke. Vanessa, I think we can save a little on the wine. There are many good local wines, and the prices are reasonable. It's both economical and supporting local products. I said it with all sincerity, like a mother trying to keep her last bit of financial autonomy and also her last bit of dignity. Vanessa laughed, a short, sharp laugh, laced with contempt. God, Eleanor, you're such a cheapskate. This is Nathan and I's wedding, not a village party. We want the best, as befits our status. Don't worry about the cost. You promised to pay, didn't you? I was stunned. Stingy. The word echoed in my mind like a death knell for the fragile hope that remained. All my life I had tried to save, sacrifice, and accumulate for Nathan little by little, and now I was being humiliated by a strange woman right in front of my son. And the most painful thing was not Vanessa's words, but Nathan's cruel silence. The man I had held in my arms through sleepless nights, now unable to say a word to protect his mother. I felt the anger rising in my chest. I wanted to stand up, to scream, to tell everyone how much I had sacrificed to be here, but I didn't. I clenched my teeth, swallowed my tears. I thought of Nathan and the last shred of hope that all I had endured would make him realize I was still here, still loved him. But the feeling of being pushed aside, of being ignored, of being a burden, was growing inside me like a heavy stone in my chest. The meeting ended. I left Willow Creek in silence, each step crushing my pride. That magnificent manor, where Nathan's new chapter of happiness should have begun, was now a golden cage trapping me in humiliation. I looked back at myself, a mother who had sacrificed everything, only to receive coldness and harsh words in return. A question arose within me, haunting like an unanswered echo. Why? Why do I have to endure all this? The meeting at Willow Creek had drained me physically and mentally. When I got home, I collapsed on the sofa like a withered leaf, exhausted and empty to the core. The humiliating aftermath of the meeting still hung over me like a cold shadow. At least, I thought, I had done my part as a sponsor, and all I had to do was wait until the wedding. But I was wrong. A few days later, the phone rang. It was Vanessa. Her voice was still cold, as sharp as a knife. Miss Eleanor, you need to buy a new dress for the wedding. The brown dress you're planning on wearing is too old-fashioned, and it doesn't match the color scheme. She spoke in a commanding tone, without any reserve. The color scheme is silver blue. You should pick a dress in that shade. I turned to look in my closet. The brown dress I had planned to wear was a classic, elegant piece, something I treasured, something I had worn on many important occasions. It brought back fond memories, moments when I was still considered a real part of the family. Besides, I didn't want to waste money on a dress I would only wear once, just to please someone else. But Vanessa, that dress is brand new and it suits me. I tried to persuade gently. I don't think I need to buy another one. No, she snapped, her voice sharp. That dress will ruin the whole party. You must wear the silver blue dress. I discussed it with Nathan, and he agrees. The sound of Nathan's name coming from Vanessa's mouth made me flinch. I didn't want to confront him, didn't want to put my son in a difficult position. Again, I backed off. The next morning, I reluctantly walked into the big boutique in town. I tried on dress after dress, my heart heavy, trying to find a design in a silver blue that I liked. Finally, I settled on a simple but elegant design, a safe choice, reflecting the sobriety of my age. At least, I thought, I had done as she asked. I took a picture of the dress and sent it to Vanessa. Not long after, my phone rang again. What is this, Eleanor? That dress is too old. You dress like an 80-year-old woman. Choose something more youthful and modern. Her voice was laced with naked contempt. I was speechless. My heart was broken. I tried to be humble, to please her, but nothing was enough. She kept on criticizing and belittling me. Every word was like a whiplash to my self-esteem. I felt small, helpless, and alone. Caleb came by late in the afternoon. He walked in and saw me sitting on the couch, staring at my phone with the picture of the dress open. "What's wrong, Eleanor?" Caleb asked, his voice filled with concern. I told him about the phone call, about how Vanessa had reacted to my efforts. Caleb's face was red, his eyes flashing with anger. "This is unacceptable. She's too much. Why do you have to put up with this, Eleanor? You don't deserve this." He clenched his fists, almost shaking. "I'll talk to Uncle Nathan. He needs to know what she's doing to you." I waved my hand, quickly stopping him. "No, Caleb, don't do that. I don't want my son to be in trouble because of me. Don't make things worse." Even though Nathan had never been on my side, I still tried to protect him, still holding on to the faint hope that this was just a difficult time, that Vanessa was just overwhelmed by the pressure of marriage. Caleb looked at me with disappointment, but respected my decision. "Are you sure you want to keep suffering like this?" he asked, his voice low. The question seemed to stab me straight in the heart. Was I sure? Should I continue to trade my self-esteem and mental health for a relationship that was broken to the core? The fire that had been smoldering inside me for years suddenly flared up fiercely. Had I loved Nathan to the point of blindness? Was it because I was too indulgent that he looked down on me? I looked back at myself, a silent, patient mother, treated as an invisible person. I understood it was time to wake up. I could no longer be the shadow that was taken advantage of and looked down upon. I needed to do something for myself. The frustration and helplessness continued to weigh heavily on me in the days leading up to the wedding. I tried to push away the negative thoughts, telling myself that everything would be fine when the big day arrived. But it seemed that Vanessa would not leave me alone. She seemed to be deliberately pushing me away, step by step, mercilessly. One quiet afternoon, I received a text message from her. Not a phone call, not a direct word, Just a short, cold, and chilling message. Mrs. Eleanor, you do not need to come to the wedding rehearsal. Everything has been arranged. Please come straight to the ceremony tomorrow. I read it over and over again. Each word was like a needle, piercing deep into my chest. Not needed. Three simple but cruel words, extinguishing the fragile hope that I still had a place in my son's happy day. The words were decisive, cold as steel, as if I were a stranger excluded from the close circle. I had thought I would see Nathan rehearse, see him stand on the altar, the place marking the important turning point of his life. But now I was not even allowed to witness it. As night fell, as I was scrolling through social media for something to calm my mind, I stumbled upon some brightly lit photos and videos. A lavish bachelorette party. Vanessa's bachelorette party, held at one of Portland's most exclusive restaurants. She was beaming with her close friends, holding a glass of champagne, looking like a movie star. Nathan was there too, laughing and chatting happily, not a hint of nervousness. My heart felt like it was being squeezed. They had a great night out, and I wasn't invited. A mother left out of both the rehearsal dinner and the bonding moments before her son's wedding. I could barely believe how cold and heartless they were. Just then, my phone rang. It was Caleb. His voice was filled with rage. He had just heard from Nathan's friends about the rehearsal and the party. Eleanor, I can't take it anymore. How can they treat you like this? I'm calling Uncle Nathan right now. No, Caleb, don't. I panicked and stopped him, my voice shaking. Don't make a big deal out of it. I don't want to ruin Nathan's day. Just leave it alone. Even though my heart was breaking, I tried to keep my emotions in check, trying to protect my son, like I always did. Part of me still clung to the hope that it was all Vanessa's doing, that Nathan still had feelings for his mother, just manipulated. Caleb sighed heavily, his sigh draining of helplessness. Eleanor, I don't understand how you can be so patient. His words carried undisguised disappointment. But if that's your decision, I'll respect it. But remember, I'm always here for you. In those dark days, those words were a rare ray of light, a fragile thread that kept me from completely collapsing. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake all night, staring at the window where the pale moonlight bathed the trees in the garden. A series of questions swirled in my mind. What was my role in Nathan's big day? I, the woman who had given birth to him and raised him with all my love, was now just an outsider standing on the sidelines, a burden to be excluded from every sacred moment. I wondered, was I really in my son's life, or just a name that had to appear on the guest list to justify the bills I had paid? Loneliness and doubt enveloped me. I remembered the nights when Henry was alive. He used to hold me when I was restless, whispering that everything would be okay. But now the house was quiet, and I was alone with my thoughts. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. A transition was coming, and I couldn't predict what it would be. There was a part of me that was tired, that thought of giving up, accepting my fate. But there was also a part, a small part, but burning, that was rising. That fire was anger, a desire to be respected. I had sacrificed too much, had endured too long, and I wondered, is there a limit to a mother's tolerance? I didn't know the answer, but I felt it clearly. I was getting closer to that limit than ever. The next morning, I woke up before dawn, having barely slept a wink. A glimmer of hope still burned within me, urging me to get out of bed. If I got to Willow Creek a little early, I thought, maybe I could find a way to help with the preparations, even if it was just a small thing. I didn't want to be just a name on the guest list. I wanted to be a real part of my son's big day. I put on the silver blue dress Vanessa had forced me to buy, even though it felt confining, like a shell that didn't belong to me. I took a cab to Willow Creek Manor. When I arrived, The scene was as gorgeous as a carefully choreographed dream. Event staff were busy arranging colorful bouquets, adjusting the bows on the chairs, testing the music over and over again. I stepped into the main hall, took a deep breath to calm myself, and headed straight for the coordinator's desk. I caught Sarah's eye, the hostess. "Hello, I'm Eleanor Whitaker, the groom's mother," I said, trying to smile. "I came early to see if I could help. Even if it's just a small thing, I'd like to help." Sarah turned back, her smile still professional, but her eyes cold and distant. "Oh, Eleanor, it's a pleasure to meet you," she said in a polite but impassive voice. "No need. Everything's perfectly arranged. Rest in the VIP room. The ceremony will begin in a few minutes." The sentence ended like a full stop, leaving no room for a response. Once again, I was pushed aside. The feeling of being sidelined, of being a nameless supporting character in my own story, welled up. I walked into the designated room, a luxurious, elegantly decorated, but cold, lifeless waiting room. I sat silently in an armchair, looking out the large windows. Luxury cars pulled up. Guests were dressed in their finest, and there was a buzz of laughter. I sat there, the one paying for this lavish party, without being invited to be a part of any meaningful moment. Time passed numbingly slowly. Then the music started, signaling the start of the ceremony. A staff member came to invite me to the front row, the family seat of honor. I stood up, my heart heavy. Nathan appeared, hand in hand with Vanessa. He was handsome in his suit, his face radiant but strangely distant. Vanessa was as gorgeous as a sculpture in her pure white wedding dress, her smile bright but cold as the morning dew. As they passed, I looked up, hoping to find something, a look of affection, a nod of understanding, a look of connection, but nothing. Nathan looked right through me like I was a mannequin sitting out of place. No look, no greeting, no sign that I had ever mattered to him. My heart sank. In that moment, I knew I had lost my son, not by distance, but by choice. Nathan had chosen a path, and it didn't include me. Vanessa glanced at me, a fleeting but penetrating look. There was a certain triumph in her eyes, as if she were whispering in her head, "See, this is a game in which you have no role." I sat there, motionless, watching the son I had lovingly raised stand before the altar, exchanging vows with someone I had never truly known. I didn't cry. My tears had long since dried up. Now there was only a cold void inside me. Not sadness, not anger, but a chilling silence, a terrifying numbness that was slowly turning me to stone. But in that silence, something else began to form. A simmering will, a flame of rebellion. I could no longer be the passive, indifferent mother who stood on the sidelines of my own life. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to make a scene. But I would demand justice in my own way, not through anger, but through determination. Not through tears, but through action. And from that moment on, a new chapter began to be written inside me, the chapter of a woman who stood up after all. The ceremony ended. I sat motionless in the front row, as if my body had turned to stone, no longer feeling the passage of time. The applause, the cheers, the melodious music that had filled the air were now just vague echoes from afar. I felt myself being sucked into an invisible void, as suffocating as the air was about to run out. I just wanted to leave this place, away from this flashy but fake ceremony that was choking my every breath. I stood up, my steps faltering as if I were carrying the weight of my loneliness. I walked quietly around to the back garden of the manor, the only place where I could hope to find some peace. There, the climbing roses were in full bloom, their sweet fragrance wafting through the late afternoon air. I took a deep breath, thinking to myself, maybe I could leave now, quietly, unnoticed. No one would care if I disappeared, but I was wrong. As I stood beside a swaying rose bush, Vanessa suddenly appeared. She wasn't alone. She was flanked by several girlfriends, still holding champagne glasses, staggering drunkenly. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes held barely concealed hostility, and the strong smell of alcohol wafted with each step she took toward me. "Ah, there's Eleanor!" Her voice rang out, high and sharp, cutting through the silence like a knife. "What are you doing here so early? Looking for attention?" The sarcasm made her friends behind her giggle. I froze. "Vanessa, I just wanted to come early to help." I spoke, my voice soft, trying to hold on to the last bit of goodwill. "Helping?" Vanessa laughed, her laugh full of sarcasm. "You? Helping with what? Or are you here to ruin my wedding? You look so suffocating, like a ghost." Her words were like whiplashes to my pride. My blood boiled. "I am the mother of the groom," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, though my words trembled. "I just want to be present on my son's big day." Vanessa narrowed her eyes, a sneer on her lips. "Mother of the groom?" she repeated, her voice mocking. "Do you think you have any right to be here? A doting old mother, controlling and clinging to her son like he was her property? Are you jealous of our happiness? Wake up! You're too old to interfere in Nathan's life." Those words, each one was like a knife to the heart, not just an insult, but a public humiliation in a space that had once been a place of joy and happiness. I felt people around me start to turn, the scrutiny, the whispers spreading. The whole garden seemed to be a stage, and I was a tragic comedy being played out for entertainment. I couldn't say anything more. My throat tightened, tears welled up, but I forced them to stop. Not in front of her, not again. And then Nathan appeared. I turned, looking at my son like a drowning man, looking at his last life preserver. "Nathan," I whispered, hoping he would see, would understand that I needed him to stand by me, even if only for a word. But Nathan's eyes stopped on Vanessa first, not me. "Look." Vanessa tugged at his arm, her voice high-pitched and coy, as if the whole thing were a harmless joke. "Your mom's acting up again. I told you, she won't stop." I held my breath, waiting for a defense. Just one. I hoped, however faintly, that Nathan would say to Vanessa, "Enough," that he would defend his mother. But all I got was a tired, distant look. No anger, no sympathy, just a cold, heartbreaking confusion. "Mom, you should go," Nathan said. His voice was low but firm. "You're making Vanessa unhappy. Don't make things worse." There it was. No hesitation, no questions about what I had just endured. He just wanted peace, wanted to please his new wife, and I, his mother, was seen as a burden. At that moment, something inside me broke. All the efforts, the humility, the fragile hopes that I had held onto as anchors for motherly love were now just ashes. The pain turned into cold fire in my heart. It was no longer pain, but despair. I looked at Nathan one last time. No more pleading, no more tears. My eyes were cold, determined, and drained of love. Without a word, I turned away. Each step down the stone path leading away from the garden was like tearing apart a memory. I was leaving Willow Creek, leaving the glamorous drama in which I had never been allowed to star. And in that moment, a decision formed in my mind, sharp as a knife. I would not pay the rest of the wedding bill. This would be my first retort, silent but decisive, a small act but a loud declaration, that I was awake. A few days after that disastrous wedding, my house was still filled with a heavy silence. But this time, it was not a silence of loneliness or sadness, but the silence before a storm that was brewing. I did not pay the rest of the wedding bill. It was not an easy choice, but one I knew I had to make, and I knew it would have consequences. As expected, the doorbell rang loudly. like a drumbeat signaling the inevitable confrontation. I didn't need to look to know who was outside. I took a deep breath, steadying my breathing, and walked to the door. Nathan appeared, his face red with anger, his eyes burning with fire. I had never seen my son so angry. At least, not with me. "What the hell are you doing?" he shouted, barging into the living room without invitation. "Why are you refusing to pay for the rest of the wedding? Are you trying to embarrass me in front of everyone?" I stood there, strangely calm. His rage no longer frightened me. The pain and humiliation of that party had left me no longer as vulnerable as before. "Nathan, calm down," I said, my voice low and steady. "I'm not shaming you. I'm simply doing what I believe is right." "Right?" He laughed scornfully. "You call it breaking a promise? You promised me. Now you're taking it back. Do you know what's in my situation? Do you know how angry Vanessa is?" I stepped forward, facing him, my eyes unwavering. "You're right, I promised. But I promised to pay for a wedding where I was respected, considered part of the family, not a ceremony where I was ignored, humiliated in front of the guests." Nathan was silent, probably not expecting me to say it so bluntly. "Mom, you're overthinking things. Vanessa's just a little stressed." "Stressed?" I chuckled, but it was a sad laugh. "Stressed enough to call Mom stingy and controlling and then blast her like an enemy at your own wedding? And what about you, Nathan? What did you do? You stood there, silent. You didn't say a word to defend her. You chose to side with Vanessa just to keep her happy, and I was pushed aside like a stranger." Nathan took a step back. His face was pale, as if his pride had been slapped. "Mom, you're going too far. I didn't let him finish. "You know that's true. You chose your wife over me, but I'm not a cash machine. Love isn't a transaction. If you were just calling and texting to please me because you wanted money, I know now. And it hurts me, Nathan. But at least I see things clearly now." Nathan clenched his fists, and in a moment of loss of control, he shouted something I had sensed, but never wanted to believe. "Why do you think I'm still in a relationship with you? Why do you think I've been trying to keep in touch lately? It's because I need money. I need a start, a career. I'm tired of you always comparing me to Henry. Now I want to prove myself, and you're making it difficult." Those words were like a cold knife stabbing deep into my heart. But strangely, I no longer felt numb. Maybe because I had expected it. Maybe because I had given up hope. The relationship between us, mother and child, had long since rotted, and now it had officially collapsed. "Okay, Nathan," I said, my voice cold and final now. "If that's all you think of me, then I have nothing more to say. From now on, you're on your own. I won't give you another cent." Nathan stared at me, his eyes blazing. But this time, it wasn't just anger, it was shock. He didn't reply, just turned and walked away, slamming the door behind him with a vengeful finality. The sound echoed in the empty house, like a thunderclap that split every link between us. I stood in the middle of the living room, not crying, not shaking. Only an emptiness crept through my body. Nathan, the child I had held in my arms, the child I had trusted and loved so deeply, was no longer someone I recognized. Everything was broken. But amid the devastation, I also felt a sense of relief, as if an invisible string that had been tightening around my heart for years had finally snapped. I had spoken out. I had stood up for myself, and now I knew another door was opening. A life free of control, free of straining to please people who only knew how to use me. I don't know what lies ahead, but at least I know I'm walking on my own 2 feet, not with my head down. Just a few days after my tense encounter with Nathan, when I thought I was slowly regaining some peace in a house that had become accustomed to loneliness, the doorbell rang again, sharp and abrupt, a stab in the silence. For a moment, I thought it might be Caleb, but when I looked through the crack in the door, it was Vanessa. She was no longer the glamorous, proud woman she had been at her wedding. Her face was tired, and in her eyes, I saw something like regret. I hesitated. My instincts told me to leave her there, but curiosity and the need to confront her once and for all made me turn the knob. "Hello, Eleanor," Vanessa said first, her voice surprisingly soft and quiet, a far cry from the sharp, aggressive tone I had encountered. I I came to apologize." I didn't reply, just watched silently. The apology sounded sincere, but my heart was hardened after so much hurt. I waited to see how the show would play out. "I know I acted badly on the day of the wedding," Vanessa continued, her eyes downcast, her voice choked. "I had too much to drink, and the stress of organizing everything made me lose control of my emotions. I'm truly sorry for what I said to you." I remained silent. The words, they sounded so reasonable, so fitting for someone who was remorseful. But there was something about the way she said them, the way her eyes didn't dare look at me, that made me wary. I had believed in that sweetness before, and the price I had paid was humiliation and hurt. "Nathan is very disappointed that you didn't pay the rest of the bill," Vanessa continued, her voice tinged with sadness. "Things are really tough for us. I know you're a mother who loves your son deeply. You don't want to see Nathan stressed, do you?" And in that moment, I understood. This was not an apology. This was a tactic, a ploy designed to extort money. She was trying to play on my compassion, exploiting my motherly love to achieve her goals. I looked her straight in the eye, no longer hesitating. "Vanessa, you don't have to act anymore," I said, my voice cold as steel. "I know why you're here. Nathan told me everything. You need the money, right?" Vanessa's face changed instantly. The mask of guilt fell away, revealing the anger and resentment underneath. "What the hell are you talking about?" she demanded, her voice rising, losing its previous politeness. "What kind of person do you think I am?" "I don't think so," I replied, strangely calm. "I know. You used Nathan, and now you think you can use me. But I'm not the same Eleanor I used to be. I won't pay a penny." Vanessa glared, her eyes blazing with hatred. Then she exploded. "If you don't pay, you'll never see Caleb again," she screamed. "I'll never let you see him again. You'll lose everything." That statement hit me right in the gut. Caleb. But I was no longer the weak, emotionally manipulated woman I once was. I had learned to defend myself, to stand tall. "You have no right to do that, Vanessa," I said slowly, each word resonating in the air. "Caleb is my nephew, and I have a right to see him. If you dare to stop me, I will sue." Vanessa was stunned. She hadn't expected me to resist so strongly. I looked at her, my eyes no longer hesitant. "And by the way, I'm going to call a lawyer to change the will. From now on, not a penny of my money will go to Nathan or you. It will all go to Caleb and to much more deserving places." Vanessa's face was as white as a sheet. The blow, though silent, had struck her ambition directly. She said nothing more, just threw me a hateful look and turned away, angry as a wounded animal. I closed the door, leaned against the wall, and breathed a sigh of relief. This encounter, though tense, gave me a strange sense of stability. All my life I had lived to please others, as a mother, a wife, a patient woman, but today I chose to live for myself. No one could bind me with distorted feelings, threats, or false guilt anymore. I had stepped out of the shadow of the past, and from here, the journey to rebuild my life, a life that was mine, truly began. After my dramatic confrontation with Vanessa, I knew it was time to really change my life, not just with empty statements, but with concrete actions. The Craftsman House, once a home filled with laughter and happiness, was now a ruin of memories that made my heart ache. Every corner, every old piece of furniture reminded me of Henry, of Nathan as a child, and then pulled me back to the cold reality where the things I loved most seemed to no longer belong to me. I didn't want to continue living in the shadow of the past. I decided to sell the house. It wasn't an easy decision, but I knew it was necessary to let go. Surprisingly, the sale went more quickly than I expected, perhaps because its old world charm still held appeal. With the proceeds, I bought a smaller apartment in the center of town, a third floor unit with a balcony overlooking a lush park. It wasn't big, but it was cozy and sunny, just the right size for a new chapter. Moving to a new place was like an antidote to my soul. Everything was new, no trace of the past, no trace of anyone in each piece of furniture. I arranged everything myself to my liking, simple, elegant, and full of life. I bought some small potted plants to put on the balcony and tended to them every morning. The feeling of building a private space, not subject to anyone's control, was truly liberating. Life began to change. I was no longer confined to four walls, alone and quiet. I joined a reading club at the town library. Once a week, we gathered, women in their twilight years like me, to discuss books, characters, and philosophies of life. I loved how the conversations opened up new perspectives, sometimes surprisingly lively. That connection made me feel seen and heard. I also started volunteering at the community center, assisting with literacy classes for seniors. Seeing the eyes light up at a word read correctly, or the perseverance of the gray-haired students, softened my heart. Being a small part of someone else's journey brought a satisfaction that money could never buy. One afternoon, while watering the potted plants on the balcony, an idea came to me, clear and inspiring. I love plants, always have. I know how to care for them, how to make them bloom. So why not share it? I started a small blog called Eleanor's Garden. There, I shared tips on caring for plants, the little things that help plants thrive, mixed with a few stories from my life through the lens of a gardener. Unexpectedly, the blog quickly attracted many followers. They left comments, asked questions, told their own stories. I realized that I was not alone. There was a whole world out there where kindred spirits were listening to me, talking to me every day. My relationship with Caleb has also become closer than ever. He often visits me, helps me with small tasks, and we read books together, play chess, or just talk for hours. He tells me about his plans for the future, about college, about his doubts, dreams, and failures. I listen without judgment, simply sharing and encouraging. Caleb is the most precious thing left in my life, a kind, sincere child who makes me extremely proud. At the book club, I met Margaret, a lively and optimistic widow. She was like a breath of fresh air in my life. We often went for walks in the park together, sipped coffee, and shared about the past days. Margaret was the one who made me realize, even though I was in my 70s, life still had many beautiful things to discover, to love, and to live. I found joy again in independence, in pure relationships, without profit, without the constraints of blood or responsibility. I am no longer anyone's shadow. I am Eleanor, a free, strong woman, and am living my own life to the fullest. Time in the new apartment passed by peacefully and gently, like an autumn stream, bringing with it simple joys and sincere relationships like small gifts that life gave. Autumn returned, dyeing the maple leaves in the park opposite the apartment red. One afternoon, after finishing my volunteering at the community center, I accidentally passed by the old elementary school, where Henry and Nathan used to study. The school still had the ancient appearance of the past, with mossy red brick walls and rows of old oak trees. I walked slowly, standing still in front of the old gate, letting old memories rush back like the autumn breeze caressing my cheeks. Then I saw an old man sitting on a stone bench under an old oak tree, reading a book attentively. His hair was white, but his eyes still shone with intelligence and gentleness. I recognized him immediately, William, a retired history teacher who had taught at this school when Nathan was a boy. I still remembered him as a teacher beloved by his students, strict but tolerant. "Hello, Mr. William," I said, giving him a genuine smile. He looked up, surprised, and then recognized me. A warm smile spread across his face. "Oh, Eleanor Whitaker, how long has it been? How are you?" We sat down on the old stone bench, letting time pass in a nostalgic conversation. William told me about his life after retirement: long days with books, long hikes in the quiet mountains. I shared with him about my new apartment, my book club activities, and my small gardening blog. We soon realized we had a lot in common: a passion for knowledge, a love of nature, and the quiet losses of old age. From that chance encounter, a special friendship gradually blossomed. William was a calm, thoughtful man who always knew how to listen. We often walked together in the park, sipped coffee at a quiet little cafe, and talked endlessly about everything, from classic novels to life philosophy. Beside him, I felt a rare peace, a kind of deep harmony that even Henry had never brought. William did not judge, did not demand. He was just quietly present, a confidant at the end of life. One beautiful autumn day, when the maple leaves were a golden honey, William invited me to his small cabin on the lake, a quiet spot just outside town. "There's nothing but pine trees and the sound of the waves," he said, his eyes twinkling with affection. "You can read, write on your blog, or just enjoy the quiet." I nodded in agreement, feeling a sudden excitement, a feeling I thought I had lost forever with my youth. It was the eagerness to embark on a new journey, not noisy, not dramatic, but full of meaning. Sitting on an old wooden chair on the porch, I looked out at the calm lake, reflecting the deep blue sky. The rows of trees along the lake were dyed yellow, as if someone had used a brush to paint autumn. The sound of the wind gently rustling the leaves, the sound of the water gently lapping at the shore, all created a gentle symphony of nature. I felt my heart calm down, strangely peaceful. I took a deep breath, feeling the scent of the forest, the taste of the water, and the peaceful days seeping into every cell. In that moment, I felt infinitely grateful, grateful for the suffering that had tempered me, the wounds that I thought would never heal. They were the ones that forced me to change, to stand up, and to find the strength deep within me. I learned to let go of things that did not belong to me, learned to love myself, and learned that happiness is sometimes simply being able to live authentically, to live freely. Now, I no longer feel like the one who was left behind. I am Eleanor, a strong, determined woman with an open heart and a soul no longer haunted by the past. I have found peace, freedom, and a beautiful new chapter in my life. I smile, a smile of relief, not forced, not painful. I am finally back on track. Thank you for listening to my story.